Actually, before we started this interview, I was trying to sort of ascertain the top 5 funniest games, top 5 funniest developers out there. And I actually think it's just yourselves and Twisted Pixel, just for the comedy aspect that you guys bring in. So maybe starting there, just how funny is Saints Row the Third?
Well, it's hard to quantify, but I will say the lead writer on the third worked on 2 and 1. So he is, capitalized on his experience. These are his babies. He understands that what the tone is, and that's evolved over a little bit of time. And he's been able to, I think, capture it in its best form on this game. Breaking the fourth wall, being self-referential, tongue-in-cheek. This is the one where I think Steve Jaros as a writer really came into his own, and kind of working with him and the art direction and everything, it all is one picture, and that humor is definitely its unique brand of tone, but it's unique to Saints Row, so we're pretty happy with the execution.
Well, I guess the question is, what did you guys set out to do with the third? And you finished off Saints Row 2, so we're flashing back a few years. You're deciding to do a third game. What's the objective? What's the rule book there?
It was from early in pre-production was blow things out, over the top. Internal mantras were everything from embrace the crazy, fun trumps all, king of the carnival, suspension of disbelief. After Saints Row 2, we saw that players resonated with that over the top kind of gameplay that we had. So it's like, let's not meet their expectations. Let's surpass them. So let's blow everything out of the water and make sure that the over the top is complemented not only from the gameplay but art direction, lines of dialogue. We went for this all cohesive experience that kind of envelope into one tone that is uniquely Saints Row.
Because I remember, I played Saints Row 2 for review. I remember in terms of colour and everything like that, even though it was an incredibly wacky game, the tones were maybe more brownish in a way. This just seems like Technicolor. This seems like Looney Tunes sort of colours. Was that a thing from the start when you were looking visually how you were going to represent Stillwater for the third game?
Absolutely. We're treating Steelport as a character, and an important thing of Saints Row 2 was it was in the same city, so a lot of the art time was spent on optimizing that city. When you throw in features like flying, you have to do certain things that they didn't have to in Saints Row 1. So from the get-go, the artists were able to work very, very closely with design and make sure that they created a city to be treated as a character and help complement and support that over-the-top theme.
Because it's one of the interesting things with sort of sandbox games, when you've got a city to play, a playground basically to work yourself in for. With missions, do the missions come first? Do the ideas for these missions come first? And then you sort of build a city around that? Or do you have a general idea for the city and go, okay, what fun can we have here?
Well, the city kind of has its own vision, and we start with very, very rough, like here's an outline of what the city will be. So a lot of the development comes more from, for missions, comes more from the story. And, we want to have a big moment here when, this character dies, or, we want to end this act with a big moment. And so we use that to build, just huge lists of like what are going to be the coolest things we could possibly do that'll meet this story goal. And usually we come up with really great stuff, and we have to pull that back into, well, in order to do this really cool mission, we need this building or this pathway to quickly get from this location to this location. So it's very interactive, and we're constantly working back and forth with each other, with the story, with the art, and with the design of the missions.
Talking about the missions, I would picture that you guys, the whiteboard you guys have that you're writing up, you probably get arrested if any casual person walked in and read that, because I've just heard there's a mission in this where there's a rickshaw chase sequence with gimps. What have you guys been smoking? Is it smoking? Have you guys been on something that this has just suddenly come to your head?
No, I think when you get a whole bunch of people together and you tell them, come up with the best stuff you can possibly think of, there are no limits on your creativity right here. We get great stuff, and it's just, when we bring everybody in these meetings, especially when we brought some new people from other projects into these meetings, they got a little wide-eyed. They were, whoa, what are you guys doing here? But I think as we started to refine that and, not tone down, but like squeeze down to like what are the best of the best ideas, things always come to the top, and we get the best out of that. And then from there, once you've got it started, you need to iterate, and make it better and better. And, we always develop more and more stuff over the course of the game. So I think, the idea of skydiving into the city was a very, very early on idea, but what that mission ended up being was not there from the beginning. It just came out through the course of development. You know, when you initially see it, and it's like, well, we need something more. This part's kind of weak. Let's add in, you know, oh, the plane's going to try to ram you. Let's put in that sequence. And so that sort of stuff just develops organically over the course of development.
Now, you sort of mentioned just making things better and better. One of the things I've noticed with the third is driving. Driving looks wonderful and feels wonderful. It's got that really nice arcadey feel, which is something you don't usually find in sandbox games. It's very bare basic. What sort of you guys looked at in terms of reiterating driving for Saints Row?
I would say that the driving mechanics have been built from the ground up. There were a lot of, frankly, hacks in the driving mechanics in SR1 and 2, and this engine is completely new, proprietary, built by Volition, and you know, everyone knows that driving is one of the main mode of transportation in open world. Well, not only in Saints Row the Third, but also in open world games. So it's got to feel good. It's got to be fun. And I know that I don't want to step on your toes here, but it was like fast food and fun was kind of what we wanted to do. How does it feel? How do they perform? And we actually had a designer that was dedicated, at least in part, to that, and making sure that working with the physics programmers to make sure it was a fluid experience that actually felt satisfying to move.
And looking at the customization options for your character anyway, it's nearly fetish levels because of the sheer range of clothes you have, and that's obviously a continuation of where you're pushing Saints Row from the gangs, from the streets, making it more like a global brand. What sort of research did you guys do for looking at the clothing ranges, looking for that level of customization you would have with the character?
Well, there were a lot of when it came to articles of clothing, we made a lot of contact sheets, so we could get a spatial representation of how many different combinations there would be. In fact, if you take all the facial combinations with tattoos and scars and whatnot, a programmer figured it out. It's a 1 and 2 Googles, so 200 zeros after it. So it's nearly limitless. Another difference in Saints Row the Third is that we have the stores are categorized. So if you go into Planet Saints, it's all the streetwear. If you go into Leather and Lace, it's all the gimp wear. And so we wanted to make sure that we gave players clothing that fit in those categories that made sense based on the store type and had enough variety so that players wouldn't get bored.
What would you feel? Let's just sort of cherry pick some things that players will look forward to play with the third. Can you cherry pick some particular favorite missions yourselves, particular moments in the game? This is where we actually find out whether you've played it or not.
The problem is always that my favorite stuff is at the very, very end of the game. So I don't want to spoil that stuff. I mean, in terms of just like minute-to-minute gameplay, I think, I jump through car windows to steal cars all the time. Like, that's a feature that I think us on the development team, we had it so early on in the game that I think everyone on the team got kind of numb to it, to how cool it was. And then the first time we showed it, when everyone that was just seeing it for the first time was like, whoa, that's awesome. We were kind of like, really? That's what you're... I guess so, yeah. I had forgotten that we were doing that. It was... So we've got a lot of stuff in there that, you forget about that, nobody's ever seen it before. I think the VTOL is another one. The VTOL, and there's kind of a speeder bike, sort of a Star Wars sort of vehicle that... flying that thing through the alleyways and through the streets of the city is just fantastic. There's no other feeling like it.
At a macro level, incorporating the city takeover as part of the story mission is something that I think is much improved over SR2. In SR2, you win a mission and then randomly get like the airport taken over. Contextually, it didn't make any sense. And the design team did a great job of incorporating city takeover into actually part of the storyline. It's an extension of a collection mechanic. You can do it if you want, but it's really satisfying to see the whole world turn purple by completing activities, going through gang operations, and buying businesses. Another great thing is it's like the RPG light aspect of it. We have perk stores where based on your level, through accumulating respect, you can perk up your own abilities as well as vehicle abilities or gang abilities, and that adds a whole nother level of playability to the game here. So it's all these guys have done all the work, but I tell you, I love it. I think they executed very well.